Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining today our presentation on mastering web app development with ChatGPT, a journey of exploration. My name is Nikolay Advolodkin. I am a principal developer advocate at Sauce Labs. I've been in the tech industry since 2008. I really am super passionate about automated software testing, software development, and CI/CD and DevOps. I currently reside in Miami with my wife and my cute little dog, Mia. There you see a picture of us with the beautiful Miami skyline in the background. And everyone always asks where I'm from. So I figured I'd take a moment to explain. I am a Eastern European Jew that was born in Uzbekistan. I speak Russian, and then I came to US in 1996 and have been raised here ever since. And as I said, now I reside in Miami. So thank you all so much for joining today for this talk. Let's go ahead and dive in. So the journey that I went on myself and that I want to take you on today is whether ChatGPT can build, test, and deploy a web application, right? ChatGPT is everywhere today. All you hear about is ChatGPT in tech and AI and how it's going to take over the world and so on. And so I wanted to go on a journey of exploration and see what are its actual capabilities. Is it all hype or is it actually true? And what are the boundaries of what it's actually capable of doing? By the way, one thing I will mention is that a lot of these really cool images that you'll see in the backgrounds, like this one specifically, were AI generated. So here I use the tool called Midjourney that allows you to generate AI images. And here I basically specified ChatGPT writing web applications. And this is what the AI generated for me. So pretty cool. Pay attention to that. So I'm going to assume that most of us know what ChatGPT already is, but for anyone that is kind of new to this area or getting started, just quickly wanted to recap that. And what better way to talk about what ChatGPT really is than to have ChatGPT explain to you what it is. As you'll see here, the way ChatGPT works is it's a chatbot that you interact with. You give it prompts and it gives you responses. It's an extremely advanced AI with which you can talk in a natural language model. And you can ask it any kind of prompts as you see here. I asked it to explain to a 5-year-old what ChatGPT is and do this in 3 bullet points. And then it spit out the answer pretty much exactly as I wanted, talking about how it's a computer program that helps people to talk and understand each other better by using special language rules and knowledge. And it says it's like talking to your friends and family. People talk to me and ask questions too. Yeah, it's kind of like that. You can have a conversation with it. The very cool part about ChatGPT is it has a memory feature. And so as you start a conversation, it can remember and continue that conversation through the rest of the prompts that we give it. And so you can, for example, start very broad and get into something very narrow or vice versa. The very first question that I had here was, can ChatGPT actually create a web application? So I had it attempt to create me a sign-up form, a React component with beautiful styling. That was the prompt that I put inside of ChatGPT. And this is what it came up with. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the React component that it actually created. And then on the right-hand side, it wrote styling for that React component. So from first looks, everything looks great. The question is, does it actually work when we try to implement it? And the answer is yes, it actually worked extremely well. All I had to do was create my own React application using create React app. And once I had that entire, folder structure and package JSON and so on, all I did was drop in the HTML and the CSS. I put them in their own files. dropped them inside of my web application, and then started up the local server. And here we are, a login component. Is it beautiful? I don't know. It's not bad. It certainly took me only a few minutes to be able to generate this. And so it's pretty cool. And it does work. Where I initially started was trying to see if it can create me an entire page. I wondered, what can it actually create me, like a landing page, for example? And there it didn't do so well, because as you'll see, one area where ChatGPT continues to struggle is whenever it has to print out long forms of text, it will cut off parts of the CSS, and you can ask it to keep continuing writing the files, but it does stop at some point. And so you will need to let it know to continue. And so obviously, as you'll see here at the bottom, you can't copy and paste this into a CSS file because it's not valid CSS. So it did create a login component. What about the actual testing of this component? The first prompt that I gave it, and the fact that it already has memory is pretty cool. I asked it to create me component tests for this login component. And so here are the tests that it created. Initially, I didn't specify any other parameters than that. And so it looked like it used React testing library, which is good for component tests. And then it wrote a few tests. It looks like it wrote a test that renders the form with all input fields. Okay, cool. That's a pretty good test to start with to ensure that it actually renders. And then it checks to see that it will update the state when the inputs are changed. Unfortunately, when I actually try to drop these tests into the code, they didn't work. So you'll see here, there were a number of syntax errors that were happening. And the reason for that is actually ChatGPT. The last time that it was trained was in 2021. And so any APIs that it got from then, API usages, that's what it remembers. And if the APIs have changed, like they do very rapidly in JavaScript, then about those new API changes. And so in here, they failed. I spent a little bit of time trying to make these tests work. Ultimately, I was unsuccessful, realizing that in this case, it probably would have been a better idea if I had test myself or simply gone to the documentation of React testing library and then followed those instead. Okay, so those are component tests. Then I said, why not try to write some end-to-end Cypress tests? And so I said, now write me some end-to-end Cypress tests. And one of the tests did work, updating state when inputs are changed. But then, as you'll see, two other tests did not work for various reasons. Then I said, okay, what about a front-end performance test? How will that work? And so I asked it to generate me a front-end performance test. As you'll see here, this is what it generated, which is actually very interesting in that it created this, because this has actually nothing to do with a component test. And so you'll see it does a Percy snapshot, which is actually a visual test. And then if you look down here for assertions, you'll see that there are no marks being checked inside of this test. And so it's really interesting how it came up with this. And so this is one of the main complaints that you'll hear about ChatGPT, is that it's a very confident bullshitter in that it will give you the answer like it knows exactly what it's talking about. And unless you know a little bit about the subject matter, you're not to spot that it's wrong until you actually find out yourself or somebody tells you. However, the accessibility test, it actually did a good job on. So it did create me an accessibility test. I dropped that accessibility test into Cypress. I ran the accessibility test, and it did find some accessibility violations. So that was pretty cool. Here is an example of me running the tests, just to show you that there is an actual file that was created, and there are, all of these are ChatGPT generated, these tests. I did nothing here except drop them in and run them. Yeah, so you'll see a number of them failed, some of them succeeded. All right, so we kind of covered a lot of areas where ChatGPT doesn't do a good job of testing at all. So you might be asking, what is the value of using ChatGPT for automated testing? Well, I found a few use cases that are pretty good. One of them is generating test data. In the upper left-hand side, you'll see I asked it to generate me positive, negative, and boundary test data for my login field. And so here you'll see this test data that was generated. You'll see a number of different test cases. You will see the name of the test, and you'll see the different input data that we are able to succeed. So a key takeaway from that is that with more evergreen kind of data that is less likely to change, right? Like the creating test data for a login field versus actually testing a login field, that kind of data ChatGPT does a really good job with right now. Here's another example on the right-hand side. Even though our component doesn't have an API endpoint, we could imagine introducing some NPI endpoints that'll then do some authentication. In this case, I simply asked it to create some test cases for a REST API endpoint just to see what it spits out. And it came out with all of this text below. I asked it to generate in CSV format. You can ask it to generate this in any format that you want, which is also kind of cool, right? You can take this data and put it in a table format, CSV format, whatever, JSON format. And it did come out with some pretty good test cases. You can see it checks that there's a correct status code being returned. There are bad requests being returned, 404 errors, and so on. So even if you didn't have ChatGPT write you the tests, it can at least help you to understand how to test an endpoint, and then you can leave it upon yourself to implement the automated testing. So what about how did it do there? On the left-hand side is exactly what came out. And as you'll see on the right-hand side, it did not work. At first, I got an error in that it wasn't able to read property testing library just DOM. I said, okay, I know that I am using the latest React. I looked in the YAML file. I saw it was using Node version 14, right, which is pretty old now. So I changed that to Node 18, got this error to pass. Then I started getting other errors. And so at that point, I said, okay, I can, of course, keep digging here and keep trying to figure out what's wrong, but it doesn't make sense because ChatGPT just didn't do a good job from the start. Then I tried Azure DevOps and said the same thing, generate me an Azure DevOps pipeline that'll build, test, and deploy the component. That also failed. It was getting errors, first of all. But then second of all, the other thing that I noticed, which was interesting, was that it defaulted to use the master branch, right? And as we mostly know, at least in GitHub, the most popular source code repository, the standard now is to default to the main branch, right? Due to the negative connotations associated with the master branch. And so had this entire YAML file been correct, it still wouldn't work because it defaulted to the wrong branch instead of the master branch. And so if you're new to this area, you'd have to spend some time figuring out why isn't my pipeline executing. If you're more experienced, you might be able to catch something like this more quickly and fix it, but you still would need to fix it. So here's a summary of everything that I've kind of covered so far. So ChatGPT's capabilities. One area where it does do really well is creative content creation. It can create you emails. It can create your social media, write reviews. I even had it write my performance review. Where it doesn't do a good job at is like JavaScript tests. As you all saw, the fact that it was last updated in 2021, that's an issue as JavaScript is such a fast moving language, especially with updates to all technologies. And so it doesn't do a good job of keeping up there. However, what is interesting is I did another tutorial where I explored doing end-to-end automation using Selenium with Java. And there it actually did do a pretty good job. I asked it to do a number of different scenarios. automating different parts of an application, writing tests, changing the structure of the tests, changing the test runners, and it did do a good job there. Creating simple web components, it did do a good job for me. I think it can have challenges depending on what you're trying to do. Maybe something simpler, it'll do a better job. Something more hard, it won't do as good of a job. Generating CI pipelines, as you saw, doesn't really do a good job. Generating test data, it does do a good job. Again, this is kind of, if you got stuff that's more evergreen, stuff that doesn't really depend on up-to-date documentation as much, then ChatGPT will do a good job. Creating complete web apps, as I showed you, I wasn't able to get it to create me like an entire landing page. Even I could keep mucking with it until I get it right. But then after that, it's still even thinking about how do I structure all of the pages, all of the files in a project in order to be able to correctly deploy it, right? If you don't know about something like Create React App and you're just getting started, you need a lot of guidance to create a project that actually works. And so it will take a lot of effort for ChatGPT to be able to do that. And finally, the piece that I didn't really talk about yet, but I should mention also, is installation of tools. I had it try to give me installation instructions for different tools. I'm like, okay, tell me how to install React testing library. Tell me how to install Cypress. At one point, I had to try to write me a visual test. It didn't do a good job of any of that. And again, just the documentation, updating in terms of installation processes. Your best bet is to simply go to the documentation of the tool and follow the installation instructions there. Here's another AI generated image, by the way, from Midjourney. I told it to create an image of a robot taking over a web developer's job. This is what it came up with. I think pretty cool. That this is where AI does a pretty good job so far. A question that might be coming to all of your minds right now is, will ChatGPT replace developers? And I think the clear answer to that is yes, absolutely. No, I'm totally joking. I don't think ChatGPT will replace us right now. I view ChatGPT as a multiplier of our ability, not as a replacement of. For example, I will have ChatGPT open, and I actually use it a lot more frequently than Google now. I actually rarely Google stuff now. ChatGPT is there by my side, helping me to craft different messages, helping me to write code, explain code, and so on. Another point to be made around this about how it's a multiplier of ability, in that I'm not a web developer by trade. I can create a web application, I can deploy it, test it, and so on. If you ask me to do it from scratch by myself without the internet, without being able to Google stuff, I would not do a good job, especially generating CSS. I am a complete beginner there. And so the fact that ChatGPT was able to create an entire login component with styling that actually works, I think that's sensational. It made me drastically better at my job. And so now I could apply my knowledge in order to move forward on my activities even faster. So the other question might be, well, what is the value of ChatGPT? Well, as I kind of mentioned, it's a multiplier of our abilities. If you have creative content that you need ChatGPT to help you with, to craft your emails, social media, blog posts, it can help you with all of that. And it, of course, speed up certain areas of development, maybe especially around slower moving programming languages like Java or like Bash commands, or maybe you need some help around Git. ChatGPT will do it. So talking more about its value, this original presentation was actually submitted to Developer Week in Oakland about a month ago now. And I actually had ChatGPT generate the abstract and the title for this presentation. So the prompts that I used was, you see the prompt that I used there. I said, create a conference talk title and abstract around exploring whether ChatGPT can help us to test a web app and create a continuous integration pipeline. And so then it gave me a title and it gave me an abstract. I had it iterate on the title a few times and it gave me a few more cool, maybe less cool variations. I picked the one that was best. I had it iterate on abstract for me, pick the abstract that was best for me, as I was submitting the presentation to the conference, I needed to provide ways. I asked it to generate me 3 key takeaways. It generated those. The key takeaways made sense. And I was able to make a submission to the conference. So again, a multiplier of ability, even though it still required my help in order to guide it in the right direction. What was really interesting, actually, being a natural language processing model, they actually are known to not do well with math. And so I asked it to create me a 100 character abstract description, which was necessary to do for the submission of the talk. And it wasn't able to figure out what 100 characters actually means. It kept exceeding the 100 characters. And so I did have to step in and come in and shorten that myself. So with that, I want to play this little video here.
I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude for joining us today. I hope you all enjoyed the presentation and found it informative and engaging. I would also like to acknowledge the hard work and collaboration that went into making this presentation a success. This was a joint effort between myself, ChatGPT, and DID. For those who would like to stay in touch, don't forget to scan the QR codes on the slide. We would love to hear from you and stay connected. Once again, thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day.
All right, so that was a 100% AI generated video. Hopefully you were able to hear the sound coming out of it. Playing YouTube inside of a YouTube stream. That's pretty funny. It's like Inception. But the image was generated using Midjourney. Asked it to generate an image of myself. I actually supplied a link of myself, and then it generated this. I was like, okay, it looks good. Drop the image into DID, which is an AI that can generate voice and make the image move as you saw. And so then you just got to drop in a script. And what did we use for the script? Of course, we used ChatGPT. So dropped all that into DID, and it generated this video for me. I think it's pretty cool. Just one more AI generated image and the barcode there for anyone that wants the source code. Here I asked it to generate an image of me shaking hands with a robot as like we're collaborating. Cool. That's pretty much it for the presentation. If you want the source code, it's there. Thank you all so much for joining. It's been a pleasure. And I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.